Chapter 58. Lightning flashed from a dark sky. The wind blew fiercely. Rain came down out of the night sky with such harsh force to impact the sea below that its waves rose and fell in violent heaves. The roar of thunder came and went after each white fire painted the black heavenly canopy. The sea raged with loud clashes of waves against its watery body, and the boat in which Sarah materialized rocked from the waves' fists pounding against it. The terrifying way in which the boat rose and dipped back into the sea as the waves tossed and smashed it into itself made Sarah scream. She sat alone in the night in a first century boat. The sea surrounded her. The distant land reached Sarah's view as mere shadows. Whether the terrified Sarah turned east, west, north, and south, she saw nature's violence from the heavens striking the sea. The boat she found herself in seemed to offer little protection. She dared not stand up, or she might be flung into the dark waters. She gripped the sides of the boat for dear life. She called out, "Wilfred! Wilfred!" No one responded. No response answered her frantic shouts. The waves slashed and splashed into the bow and stern of the boat. She had nothing with which to steer it toward land, if she could see any land to steer toward. Realizing she was in a state of panic, remembering this was a lucid dream, Sarah took a deep breath. Calm, Sarah. Keep calm. Remember the mnemonic. She inhaled again and exhaled as the boat heaved and dived back into the water, splashing her face and wetting her hair. Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior, she repeated it again and again. Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. Another boat suddenly appeared on the wild waves. Peering through the darkness and torrent of rain, Sarah thought she could see several men in the other boat frantically scooping water out of the boat. They were shouting at each other. Then another boat appeared in the distance. She could hardly be sure in the darkness, but there seemed to be the shape of another person alone in that boat. Sarah wondered if this could be Wilfred. She strained to see more clearly. She could see, as she focused more intently, the other figure was a man energetically waving at her. The other figure was a man energetically waving at her. The fierce downpour, the high waves, and gale-force winds obscured the man's features. Sarah guessed it had to be Wilfred. She shouted, "Wilfred!" Then a third boat appeared in the darkness. A woman sat in the boat, calmly and quietly. A flash of lightning tore open the darkness, and Sarah could see clearly the woman in the fourth boat. There was no doubt in Sarah's mind. The woman wore a flowery apron and gray gloves, just as Sarah had imagined. Sarah stood up promptly, almost being tossed overboard. She bent down and gripped the sides of her boat to steady herself as it rocked from side to side. Sarah called out, "Mother?" The sound of thunder rolled by her. "Mother?" Another flash of lightning, and Sarah felt her mother stare at her, as if looking right into Sarah's eyes. "Mother!" Sarah shouted. At that moment, as the waves knocked against her boat, as the violent waves threatened to capsize her vessel, Sarah saw what looked like a man in a long flowing red tunic and a dark sash across his chest, walking on the shadows, walking out of the shadows. This man wasn't in a boat. He walked on the waves. The waves flattened under his feet. The man drew closer and closer as the waves splashed around him and formed a path under his steps. The lightning flashed and the thunder following roared after it. Between the three boats bearing Sarah, Wilfred, and Jasmine was the larger boat filled with men. Sarah recognized in the brilliance of the lightning. One of those men, who seemed the youngest among them, clung to the bow of the tossing first-century vessel, looking out to the dark, violent waves. Sarah recognized him as the young Apostle John. John called out to the man traversing the sea, flanked by high waves. "It is a ghost!" Sarah called out. "Mother!" The virulent rain drowned out their shouts. At that moment materialized in the dream John the aged, standing behind his younger self. Sarah froze at the sight. She heard the man walking on the water calling back, "Ego imi, do not be afraid." A realization struck Sarah at that instant. Even as she gazed through the pouring rain, even as she flinched at the slash of lightning, even as the roar of thunder made her flesh tremble, watching John the aged standing behind John, his younger self, painted a truth for Sarah that made her whisper to herself, "It can't be that simple." "Lord, if it is you," someone shouted from the center boat, "allow me to join you on the sea." The man, who Sarah now understood was Jesus, called back, "Come." Sarah watched in horror as amidst the watery tumult and boisterous wind hitting them at gale force, one of the disciples stepped out of his boat and began walking toward Jesus. The lightning flashed around him. The waters from the heavens pummeled him, yet he steadily, cautiously walked on the sea toward Jesus. Jesus held out his hand toward him. Looking in the direction of the center boat, Sarah saw John the aged, and she knew. "John the aged, you are the elder of yourself." When she turned away from John, this new revelation firmly in her thoughts, she saw the man who had been walking on the water with Jesus had fallen deep into the sea. The sea was up to his neck, and he was sinking fast. He called out, "Lord, save me." In a dreamy instant, Jesus stood by him, thrusting his hand in the sea as the man sank beneath the waves. Jesus pulled him up out of the water. "Ego imi," said Jesus again. "Peter, why did you doubt? Do not be afraid. It is I." Together the two men then climbed into the center boat. Sarah could hardly breathe. The world around her spun topsy-turvy. Sarah's boat instantly materialized on white, dry sand. A bright daylight surrounded her. She could see the center boat, too, had landed on the sand. Jesus and his disciples were already climbing out and leaving. Sarah searched frantically for the boat with her mother, Jasmine, in it. For one split second, she saw it, or she thought she saw it. Then she saw only Wilfred there in his lone boat on the opposite side of the center boat. Hurriedly, Sarah climbed out of her boat. She ran over to Wilfred. "No, no, she's gone." Wilfred looked at Sarah in sorrow. "I know. You saw her? You saw her too? She was sitting in a boat, her own boat." "A dream within a dream," responded Wilfred, "until we're brought here, and that dream ended." "What? I don't understand." Sarah was frantic. "This is enough for today." Sarah could feel Wilfred's hand squeezing her own in the wake world. "No!" screamed Sarah. "Don't!" But Wilfred released his grip and opened his eyes. In a rush, Sarah's eyes flashed open, and disappointing anger poured out of her grief. She stood up forcefully. "Why did you do that? Why did you break our reality anchor?" The Nolan Library lights flickered on and off. The loudspeaker blared. "Nolan Library will close in 15 minutes. Please gather your items and head to the checkout. Exit the building." "We are out of time," returned Wilfred. "You saw what we were able to see in this vision. You have to understand. A dream is only a small part of the vision. Together we conjured Jasmine. But I saw her on a sunny day in her garden. Why didn't... That's your imagination of Jasmine. It had no connection to Jasmine's soul thought. She thought of her favorite story, The Blustery Day. Sarah stopped hearing this. She stared in stunned silence. Mother's favorite story. Indeed. But how did you... Jasmine was one of the founders of our Lucid Dreamers group. She told us about the Blustery Day. It's an integral path to finding her in the alternate realities. That is why we appeared at this event in Jesus' life, the walking on the sea in the storm. Exactly, the blustery day. Wilfred stood up and started packing. We must go. Librarians and clerks will be around soon, making their pre-closing floor checks. Sarah joined him, slinging her backpack over her shoulder. So, what I conjured in my imagination has no purpose then? Not entirely. Did you notice what your mother wore? Nodding in recognition, Sarah inhaled deeply. The flowery apron and gloves. She wore them. Wow, what a small contribution I made. They started walking down the aisle together toward the stairs. As they descending the winding stairs, Wilfred reminded Sarah, "You made a contribution based on your skill level." He stopped on the steps. The exit below them. Darkness had taken a stronger grip on the night. He took her small hand tenderly in two of his. "Don't belittle what you've contributed. John the Aged, the Elder," Sarah blurted out. "I know that for sure now." Wilfred blinked at Sarah. You, you think so? We've been trying to figure that out for months. Every time I see the younger John, the older apostle makes sure to be there with me too. I know it's him telling me he's the elder. They started back down the stairs as a female security guard was frantically waving at them to come down and exit. Wilfred sighed and hurried down the stairs. Together they passed through the revolving glass doors into the night. The agitated security guard finally locked the doors behind them. Sarah smiled and waved at her, but the guard merely shrugged an annoyed shoulder and disappeared into the darkened library halls. Wilfred said, as they stood there together, "None of our members have ever had a lucid dream with John the Aged and his younger self together. It wouldn't have occurred to us to make the connection in this way. I'm impressed." "Will Donaldson be impressed?" thought Sarah out loud. "He's been paying me 65 grand in installments as a salary to figure out who the elder might be. I wonder if intuition will be enough for him." Wilfred thought for a moment. "You need a concrete example of John the Aged as the elder that is so certain that whatever else remains in doubt, John must be described as the elder. If there is one thing everyone agrees on in the group, there were two Johns in the apostles' time." Putting his hand to his lip, he said, "Go with your intuition. Whoever is the elder, say to yourself, 'This is John the Aged, the apostle.' Look for something that identifies a distinction of high irrefutability. Remember the axiom of Sherlock Holmes." "Axiom of Sherlock Holmes?" queried Sarah. "Yes, Watson," Wilfred laughed as they walked away from the Nolan Library, fading into the curving path behind the dark shrubs into the night. "When you have eliminated every possibility, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." Lockbox, Chapter 59. The next day marked the halfway point through November. It was early in the afternoon when Sarah made a point to make a stop at Little Town Groceries. She had hoped to speak with Donaldson, but the store owner was not coming into the office. A disappointment for Sarah. She met instead with Rhonda in the break room at the back of a very busy store. It was government check day, deposited on SNAP cards. The necessary food program had become a staple for the poor and low income citizens of Colorado. The citizens of Lafayette, Colorado, finally had the desperately needed funds to help replenish their dwindling food stocks for their children and themselves for another month. Sarah had been absent from her job as assistant manager in the store for quite a while. She missed its vibrancy and neighborliness. Little Town acted not only as a place to purchase sustenance, but also it remained a hub of local gossip and togetherness for the inhabitants of the small town. Returning there reminded Sarah of the waking life she enjoyed at the small grocery store. A part of her longed for its simplicity and familiarity again. That was the nostalgic part. Another part of Sarah reminded her that with $65,000 rolling into her account in bi-weekly installments, she no longer felt the pangs of hunger or worried about the lights going out for failure to pay. She no longer had to concern herself with would she have enough gas in her car to make it until the next miserly but grateful paycheck. She replayed in her mind's eye the relieved faces of mothers pregnant with one child and another child peering over the cashier counter as the food bill rang up. There could be no denial what she recalled meant real life also, even if by her vision and dreams these recollections became evidence of their vicarious nature, evidence of a broken relationship between created and creator. How many of these moms grasped that this wakefulness existed as only one slice of a greater consciousness? At one time, Sarah herself had believed in the singularity of human existence in an unsympathetic cosmos. She lived clueless that terrestrial existence actually was just one alternative essence or nature of being, an offshoot of the difference in kind from the casual mode of being. Her mother, Jasmine, had discovered this truth. Jasmine had inexplicably gave her life for this discovery of the truth of existence, S or so it seemed to Sarah, and she needed to talk to someone about it, someone she trusted. She trusted Donaldson not because he told her everything. No, far from it. She had come to believe Donaldson hid information for some reason. He kept from Sarah truths about her mother which gnawed at Sarah's guilt. This guilt, propelled by her dream vision journey with Wilfred, carved within Sarah's soul the species of doubt regarding Donaldson's benign intentions. However, Sarah had not arrived at Little Town Grocery in order to torment Donaldson with accusations from her suspicions. She wanted to get answers to her perplexing questions. What triggered her mother's faith in Jesus? How did this all lead to her death? Still, she still was no closer to answers. Unfortunately, Sarah would not obtain none of those answers to her question from Donaldson today. While she felt disappointment at Donaldson being absent from the office, Rhonda would be a useful substitute sounding board. She had complete trust in her Gucci, fearlessly direct bestie. Little Town Grocery had a break room. Like any other small establishment, employee amenities were minimal. Such was the case in Little Town. The break room provided a brief haven from the bustle or drudgery of daily labor without a load of frills. There the employees could catch up with each other, eat the meals they brought from home, or just peruse a magazine quietly. Only three rectangular tables graced the small break room, capable of seating four comfortably. A lone counter was located near the entrance into the break room. In the middle, of the counter was the sink. Beyond the sink, toward the far end of the counter, sat an overused single microwave oven. Closer to the entrance, a dish holder occupied the counter, loaded with dishes and employee mugs, their names prominently written on the white and green coffee stained mugs. The employees did have access to a coffee maker, old fashioned and barely functional. Nevertheless, the gallant coffee maker succeeded in boiling out cups of the coffee. The exhausted employees asked for little more. In addition to the two worn meal producing gadgets on the counter, the employees could obtain a beverage from the pop machine near the entrance. $1 for a Coke or Cherry Coke, a Sprite, or an orange soda. When Sarah arrived, discovering Donaldson would be absent from his office today, she sought out Rhonda in the break room and found her friend sitting at the last table in the back, flipping pages in a magazine. She hurried over to her. Anything interesting in that old rag? She grabbed a chair opposite Rhonda and sat down. Rhonda was dressed in her usual supervisor's attire, a red sweater, black slacks and shoes, and her hair tied back in a ponytail. Rhonda looked up. Her brown eyes measured Sarah. You a chipper? Sarah did indeed feel chipper. She had seen her mother, admittedly in a dream vision. This fact did not diminish Sarah's excitement. Sarah dove right in, sharing the rationale for her exuberance. You know, weeks ago, I had no idea I would ever have a chance to see my mother again. I believed she had left me forever. I came to know my expectations were based on a faulty understanding of life itself. Dreams, Rhonda, and visions. They brought me to an alternate reality. Lucid dreaming unlocked for me a world within worlds, above worlds, beyond them even. Sarah chuckled, pointing to her friend. You are the blame for this change in me, you know. I am the blame, laughed Rhonda. Yes, absolutely, reasserted Sarah. You led me to Father Seraphim. It was he who taught me visions and dreams transcended biology, that they connected every individual conscious of sentient beings to a single overarching consciousness, a creator. The result, continued Sarah, was she now experienced hyperdimensionality. The hypothesis had been developed by an Orthodox priest who also happened to be a PhD researcher in the field of lucid dreaming and physics. A materialistic physicist had ridiculed the theory as bordering on science fiction, Sarah excitedly told her friend. I lived it, Sarah blurted out with force. I crossed the bridge between the science of experimentation and the science of metaphysical logic. I would not have done so if you had not insisted I seek out a third party about my dreams. Sarah went on to more of her fantastic thoughts, admitting to her friend with a wildness in her tone that intrigued Rhonda. For sure, my mother had died. She was cremated. I know. I'm not under any misapprehension. Her body was fired into ashes and deposited in its urn. I have that urn with her ashes inside. The urn, which Sarah never talked about but received a few days after the cremation had been completed. Sarah remembered it took her several days to want to pick up the urn. She had been broken seeing her mother for the last time lying in the coffin. It had been heart-wrenching. All she could do was flee home, drive as fast as she could along Highway 93 between Golden and Boulder, and then east to Lafayette, to her trailer home. She recollected that day to Rhonda with emotive sincerity. Once, I briefly stopped my car in nausea and pain. I stopped the car along the side of the highway, got out, and ran down the field, ran from I do not know what, until I felt so nauseous I threw up in front of the Flatirons, regurgitated all my anger, my loss, my fear of the coming loneliness. Sarah vomited her old life and cried rivers until her eyes felt like they would pop out of their sockets. She recounted to Rhonda. On that day, her eyes burned like fires supplied by hell. Sarah took a deep breath, halting, seeking empathy in Rhonda's eyes. Rhonda slowly closed her magazine. So, now that you've gone through all this catharsis, you're chipper today. What are you going to do from here? Absorbing her friend's stoic question, Sarah sat back. Today, however, I am vouchsafed an even greater motivation to follow the path I'm on. Father Seraphim had told me, "You are living grace." At the time, I had no idea what he meant. You know, Christian philosophy is filled with terminology which can blow a person away. Donaldson, too, had altered her morning, tore it away from her by the assertion that her mother wanted Sarah to pursue Jasmine's journey. Sarah refrained from going there with Rhonda. The enticing promise of $65,000 still worked its bait on Sarah, provided her with a secure livelihood. Because of this minor fact, she refused to reject Donaldson's challenge, even though her sentimentality around the little town owner had taken on a suspicious edge. Many months now had passed from those first hours of mourning. The consequences of the journey had implanted itself into the depths of Sarah's consciousness. Sarah continued, "Yes, Mother didn't exist anymore in my waking reality. I can't get her back in this way. Lucid dreaming and visions external to my will, however, had promised something so powerful I must pursue this hope that my mother, in some form, lives." Sarah's bright blue skirt and boots didn't speak of for her mood. Her vibrant yellow blouse and sweater did. "I saw Mother," Sarah said happily. She repeated her belief emphatically. "She lives somewhere in an alternate nature." "You saw Jasmine in an alternate reality. You mean in a dream, don't you?" "Yes, however briefly in a dream vision." Rhonda nodded her approval. "I knew Father Seraphim would help you." Sarah sighed relieved. She had expected Rhonda to attack her belief as complete folly. This relief inspired her to confess, "Also, Wilfred helped me." Rhonda pushed her closed magazine to the side. Now she sat back and folded her arms. She had the mature, questioning look that Sarah had grown so used to seeing, the protective look. "He came around then?" "Extra," laughed Sarah in a serious tone. "We joined in a single lucid dream." "OMG," Rhonda leaned in. "Does Donaldson approve of this?" "No." She put her hand to Rhonda's mouth. "Shh! It's a secret." Rhonda frowned as Sarah removed her hand from Rhonda's mouth. "What happened? You have to tell me every detail." Lockbox, Chapter 60. Sarah told Rhonda every detail. From Wilfred's text urging her to meet him at Norland Library, to their lucid dream meeting that Friday night at Norland Library. She told her friend how she and Wilfred held hands, using their physical connection as their anchor to their joint waking reality. She told her friend how she and Wilfred held hands, using their physical connection as their anchor to their joint waking reality. Sarah told her about the storm and the wild waves Sarah found herself in. Rhonda listened enraptured as Sarah told her about being in a boat alone, about Wilfred being in his own boat, and about Jesus' disciples being in a separate boat too. The shocking part, Sarah shared with near teary emotion how she saw her mother in a boat wearing the flowery apron Sarah had conjured in her thoughts. Then, Rhonda, I saw Jesus coming, Sarah whispered, almost afraid to say the words. He was walking on the freaking water, like insanely and calmly walking on top of splashing waves beneath angry falling rain. He didn't flinch once at the flash of lightning from the sky. It was no exaggeration, Sarah insisted, because she saw one of Jesus' students try to get out of the boat to do the same thing, even after Jesus told him to come. The guy almost drowned. Sarah continued. Jesus had to pull him out of the water. Most incredulous of all, Sarah told Rhonda with awe in her voice. As soon as Jesus and his students stepped into their boat, we all appeared on a dry, sunny, sun-baked beach. It was a bright, clear day, not a cloud in the heavens. After this, Sarah explained, her mother vanished. Wilfred then broke off the connection, and the lucid dream vision came to an end. Wow, exclaimed Rhonda. How did Wilfred make it possible to connect your dreams? I'm not entirely sure. He said consciousness would be our bridge, responded Sarah. That is why I came to the store today. I had been hoping to find Donaldson and query him. Oh, Rhonda shook her head. Don't you realize you just shushed me for even mentioning Donaldson's name? And your instincts are correct. Donaldson thinks of the lucid dreaming group as being his own personal property. He already told you he thinks you're not ready. No telling how he'd react to hearing what Wilfred did to help you. Sarah grew angry. She snatched at the magazine Rhonda was reading, leafing through its page with the zeal of disinterest. He's not concerned about me being ready. He's hiding something. If Wilfred could do for me what he did, Donaldson is aware of the technique. She paused. Wilfred did warn me there are dangers to lucid dreaming. He admitted as much. He said what he did for me required I have just a rudimentary skill. Bridging lucid dreams is on an entirely different level. Rhonda interjected. If Wilfred expressed concern, why do you still think Donaldson is hiding something? Sarah set the magazine back on the table. My mother. He knows something about her he is refusing to divulge to me. Sarah looked at Rhonda. You know, my mother came to believe in Jesus Christ. She became a Christian. That isn't news, dearie. You knew this, agreed Rhonda. I am a Christian too. I know, Sarah sighed. I'm sorry. I am not. I just want to follow this path my mother was on. She gave me that lockbox to do what I'm doing. Whatever may be the case about Donaldson, the lockbox is a solid intention for my mother. And I've experienced alternate reality in dreams and visions in part because of it. But why me? Why my mother? I'm sorry. I am sorry. This is my only purpose. Having a belief in this wonder worker, Jesus, seeing amazing things he can do, it's insufficient to forget this faith was fatal to my mother. Rhonda cut in. Godlike things. Things no human can do. Granted, Sarah shot back. I get it. It is not enough for me. Tell me, Rhonda, why do you believe in Jesus? What made you cross over to have the same faith my mother had? You want to know my tale of how I came to be a believer? Yes, actually. Now I am here. I couldn't get what I needed from Donaldson today. Why not listen to my best friend? Let me in on your little secret. Rhonda laughed. Oh, it's no secret. I've never hidden my beliefs from you. No true Christian can do that, even if you tried. We have the life giving spirit. That guy wants to get out. He jealously demands his glory. I imagined one day we'd have this conversation. I just never wanted to impose it on you. At last, you freely asked why I believe Jesus is God, my Savior, on your own accord. I will tell you my conversion tale. Lockbox, Chapter 61. Rhonda began her conversion tale, a Puerto Rican accent enveloping Sarah's hearing. My childhood years took place on the island of Puerto Rico. The tropical sunshine, the vast waters of the Atlantic Ocean, and the many narrow, unpaved streets of the land of my birth defined my horizons. My impoverished family included me, my mother Sonia, my sister Teresa, who was second oldest after me, and my brother Antonio. My father was Oscar Vasquez. He worked hard all his life. He worked many unusual hours as a police officer. We rarely saw him at home, and when he did spend time at home, he had very little energy for his kids. He tried his best, don't get me wrong. I do not judge him. Mother carried most of the load with us children. You would think because my father had an important societal job that we lived well compared to our neighbors, and this would be a misunderstanding. My father was not married to our mother. He was our father because he had a relationship with our mother. We called him father from habitual presence, not marriage. You might say they were common law married. Our last name came from the man my mother previously married, Joey Fontanez. My mother either never changed the last name or never officially divorced her previous husband. My little brother Antonio had Oscar for his father. My sister Teresa had this Joey as father. You met your father only once. I never met my biological father. My mother never told me who he was. That has been the mystery of my life. When I was born, my birth certificate simply said Baby Fontanez. Only later was my name added, Rhonda. As a child, I felt disconnected. Naturally, my mother treated me the same as my brother and sister. Our common law father treated me in a somewhat distant way. I was not his kid. Sister Teresa and my brother Antonio loved needling me that at least they knew who their father was. They took great pride in reminding me I was an unknown in terms of lineage. I had no father. I had no rights in the family. I remembered every Sunday going to liturgy, our family being devoutly Catholic. I loved it in those days as a little girl when we went to liturgy, because on those days, when we came to church, I became a member of a universal family. Everyone had the same condition. Everyone called one person Father, and it had a safe meaning for me. I took the moral admonitions of the Roman Catholic faith seriously. I wanted nothing to come between me and the communion, the Father who provided us with the unifying bread and wine. For me, this was a law. And this one law, the Catholic faith, and its moral demands, gave me power in my family. I found I had a weapon to come back at my brother and sister. When they reminded me I was a bastard child, I reminded them they were sinners like me. They were lawbreakers. I perfected my pride this way, strengthened my self worth. As a Catholic, I felt I was God's child and He my Father, and this worked as long as I kept the Catholic laws. In school, I took moral superiority to a new level. By the seventh grade, it was common for teachers to praise me as a prime example of a good student. They acknowledged my intellect. I put on airs of moral rectitude. I never gave anyone trouble. I studied. I always handed homework on time. I always handed homework in on time. I passed all my tests. I always dressed appropriately, however constrained by poverty. I did not chase after boys, and I was never caught at wild parties. I did all this because I was besting my brother Antonio and my sister Teresa. I thought mother loved me because of it, and father respected me. My mother would remind me that I never gave her any trouble, not like my brother Antonio, who was constantly in trouble with the law. Oscar would spank him hard, but it only made Antonio worse and more violent. Everyone in town feared Antonio because he had a harsh, unpredictable temper. Teresa became promiscuous and conceived out of wedlock. My mother refused to help her get an abortion. She yelled at her every day, "You enjoy the pleasure of sex. Now take responsibility for the life in you. That's God's law, and you will not kill that baby." I took pride watching the downfall of my brother and sister. Nevertheless, still, I was the bastard child. My one card reminded my one card remained my belief that I had moral and religious merit. I had perfected Catholic faith. I went to liturgy every Sunday. I even went to Vespers, something almost no one else on the island did. I prayed to the saints and did my rosary to the Holy Mother as often as possible. I took every opportunity to wipe away any stain at frequent confession. I had earned the praise of parents and teachers alike by my uprightness. I loved to say the phrase, "Father," to my parish priest. In spite of all this kinetic religious activity, I had absolutely no relationship with God and felt no peace. As I matured, my mind took a political turn. I came to understand that Puerto Ricanas may have citizenship in the United States, but we don't share in America's bounty like other Americans. Puerto Rico was not a state, although we have voted in 4 referendums to become a state in the United States. This is important to understand my family's mindset. We are called a commonwealth, but we are just a territory of the United States. Storms frequently devastated our little island, and our motherland, America, was always slow to come to our existence. In 2017, the island of Puerto Rico suffered back to back large hurricanes, Hurricane Irma and Maria. The storms caused an extreme amount of damage. We almost lost all power, call service, cell service, and suffered thousands of landslides. Almost all our roads were blocked, and just about all of us, nearly the entire population of the island, needed assistance after the storms. It was after this, like so many others on the island, my mother decided to lighten her load. She sent me to the mainland to live with our grandmother, who had herself moved to New York years earlier. My grandmother was named Sandra. She was even more strict as a Catholic than my mother. It didn't bother me. I fit right in. Then one summer day in the 8th grade, I was with my friend Paula. She was a gorgeous red-headed girl with brilliant green eyes. Her family descended from the original Spanish conquerors from Spain. My grandmother and I lived in the Bronx projects. Those tall buildings rose 20 stories. The elevators were often out of order, and having to walk to one's floor was a too frequent reality. On one of those occasions, my friend Paula and I had to climb the stairs to our apartments. We both lived on the 17th floor. We spent many days and hours together, and we both attended Eisenhower Intermediary School. We played together often, and when we were together, there existed this strange attraction which I didn't understand to be normal. We often thought the same things, loved the same bands, and laughed at the same silly jokes. We had fun just simply being together. It didn't matter what we did. We were laughing at some silly thing that happened at school during the summer session and shoving each other playfully in the stairwell. The well had the usual smell of urine, and half the lights were either dim or burned out. There was this mixture of shadow and white glare that alternately made the place spooky and romantic at the same time. Seemingly out of nowhere, Paula grabbed me and kissed me on the lips. The act froze me. Sparks of pleasure surged through me I had never felt before. Why did you do that? I asked. She spoke. Because I'm curious. For a moment, my brain told me, no, yelled at me, no. Paula was my best friend, and I laughed at her. I held her face in my hand and kissed her back. We laughed at each other and kissed each other over and over again. Experimenting is what we said we were doing, but desire had taken control of us. How long we went at it in that stairwell and how far we went when it ended, there remained no part of our bodies we failed to explore. Strange how no one interrupted us in the stairwell. Days after, I sat at home thinking about it. I was horrified. I realized I had broken a major prohibition. Nevertheless, I had neither the will nor the desire to put an end to what Paula and I experienced. Thereafter, we frequently found paces to make love to each other. The touch of her hand on my flesh, the warmth of her flesh against mine, the gigantic release of pleasure that washed over me each time. I would not give up. The pleasure and guilt I felt, the horror of being discovered, turned into lies. I started lying so I could be with Paula. I turned my back on Catholicism, not by leaving the faith of my family, but by pushing the faith into an acceptable corner of my mind. I dutifully went to confessional, holding back what Paula and I cherished. To all aspects of Catholicism, a mist as thick as soup descended upon my soul. I no longer heard in my conscience that moral whisper that going to liturgy and sleeping with Paula, another woman, was incompatible. Sarah listened to Rhonda without saying a word in response. She had always suspected that Rhonda might have an issue with boys. Rhonda went on with her story. Paula was the first female lover. He would not be the last. We lost track of each other when my grandmother moved out of the projects and across the way to a brownstone complex on Teller Avenue, 170th Street, and a park separated Paola and me. It wasn't far away, but not only did we live in different places now, we attended different schools. For me, the move may have been the best thing because by this time I had rather be with Paula than to be at school. Lovemaking with Paula led to marijuana, on occasional beer, and a persistent truancy. I lived and practiced a lie. I lied to cover up that I was not showing up in school. My freshman year in high school was a disaster. I was sure I would be held back in ninth grade. Terror dragged me back to a desperate prayer. I promised God everything would change if I could just pass on to the 10th grade. One day I came downstairs to watch over the mailbox. I knew my last grades. My feared fate would come in the mail. I wanted to prevent my grandmother getting the inevitable condemning letter from the high school. Then, sure enough, the mailman came with it. Knowing me, he smiled at me and gave me our mail. I quickly leafed through the letters and found my freshman year final report card. My heart raced so fast, I tore it open, and to my utter relief, I saw they had passed me to the 10th grade. I had been assigned to a special school called the Annex. I danced with joy. With such relief, I swore to myself never again to be caught in this situation. I thanked the God I prayed to, though I didn't have any real intention to relate to him. After that perilous educational reprieve, I finished high school at the top of my class, and I met a girl named Sandra, just like grandmother. She was a white American. She had been accepted into UC Boulder. I applied too in order to be with her. That freshman year of college, I moved to Colorado to live on campus. Sandra and I roomed together. I continued to discover I was a lawbreaker. I loved her physically like I loved Paula and the other girls between them. However brief those other relationships lasted. In time, I learned my sister Teresa had moved in with some man on the island. My brother Antonio was serving time in jail. Mother and Oscar broke up, and somehow Mom became pregnant again. A different man this time. Being a dutiful Catholic daughter, I helped my mother move out to Colorado to be near me. This way I could help her with the new addition to our family. Being my mother's help proved difficult. I had to drop out of the university to work. Sandra and I kept seeing each other when we could. Then came the outings. People who were openly living a homosexual and lesbian lifestyle started a movement to out secret homosexuals and lesbians. I was horrified. I didn't consider myself a lesbian. For me, lies had become my lifestyle, not my sexual identification. These people wanted to make it my identity. At first, these LGBTQ activists were going after those who had notoriety, the famed and famous. I was young and unknown, so it gave me comfort. But I knew soon even my little pleasure secret with Sarah might be exposed, and Sarah was winning notoriety on campus. One spring morning, Sarah and I sat together by Boulder Creek. A young blond man on an early morning jog in his gray jogging outfit with blue stripes down the leggings stopped and jogged in place in front of us. He stared at us. I said to him, "Good morning." He was carrying a backpack. Taking it off his shoulders, still jogging in place, he lowered it to the ground, opened it, and took out a pamphlet. He handed it to me. "Here you go," he said. "You look like you need it." I incredulously let him stick that pamphlet in my hand. Still jogging in place, he placed his backpack back over his shoulder and started off. I yelled at him, "What is this about?" He called back over his shoulder, "Take it and read." I will never forget that moment for all my days. Sarah interrupted. "Why won't you ever forget that moment?" It was the moment something inside of me changed. Rhonda took Sarah by the hand again. If I tried to describe it, my words would fail me. But it's like when you wake at an early dawn and the room is all stuffy and dark, and you quickly move to the window, throw back the shades so that the sunlight spills in with its bright glory. You open the window and breathe in the cool breeze and hear the birds chirping. In that moment, you feel alive for a new day. That's truly amp. But I have no idea what you're talking about. Life had returned to me, Sarah. Life had returned to you? Sarah shook her head, confused. Rhonda laughed excitedly. Yes, exactly. I felt confused too. Rhonda went on with her story, painting a picture of her journey back home. After Sandra and I parted, I didn't realize I would never see Sandra in the same way again. Walking along the bike path with the Boulder Creek gurgling by me on my right, I examined the young man's pamphlet. The title of the pamphlet, in big, bold red letters, said, "The Failure of the Good Person," and under it, an invitation to come to their next meeting. There was another quote on the pamphlet cover. I read it. "For we know that the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. For what I am doing I do not understand. For what I will to do, that I do not practice. For what I hate, that I do. If, then, I do what I will not to do, I agree with the law that it is good. But now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. For I know that in me, that is, in my broken nature, nothing good dwells. For to will is present with me, but how to perform what is good I do not find. For the good that I will to do, I do not do, but the evil I will not to do, that I practice. Now if I do what I will not to do, it is no longer I who do it, but the evil that dwells in me. The quote was from Apostle Paul's letter to the first century Romans, chapter 3, verse 14 through 20. When I read that, I started crying as if exposed to the entire universe. I ran to my car across the green field along Arapahoe Avenue that sunny morning, jumped in the driver's seat and drove home, just crying and playing through my mind the implications of the quote. What I regularly felt deep inside was my self-condemnation, that inner knowing that my lifestyle had been rebellion. I had turned my back on the truth and tried to bury it. Light now came inside me like a flood. Life, which had returned to me. It took that quote from that pamphlet and drilled it home. I had been living and practicing a lie, all the while pretending to have defeated my siblings by being good. They had succumbed to the temptation of this world, and so had I. I hid this truth only by means of my sin of pride. I had turned my back on my Creator. As I parked my car back at our apartment in Lafayette, I sat there, letting my tears roll down my cheeks. I knew then what I had to do, accept the reborn life in me, the gift given to me by God. Sarah cut in. She realized she had been wiping tears from her own eyes. Wait, wait, what gift? Life, Sarah, God's life, His Spirit. When He gifted it to me, I could see myself again, how naked I was before Him. And this was okay. I knew it was okay. He forgave me. Sarah, wiping away a tear. But did you believe at that moment? I did, in my heart. Rhonda emphasized, touching her hand between her breasts. I did. Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior. I believed. I didn't formally confess it to myself yet, but yes. She sharply nodded her head toward Sarah in confirmation. Sarah sighed. Your conversion story is amazing. I I don't know what to say. I can see you felt the truth. You know more now about your mother than you ever knew before. You've been to the garden paradise. You saw the fall, the lie, that we can live by the knowledge of good and evil. I tried and I couldn't. Then I stopped pretending and went my own lustful way. I was always a spiritually disconnected dead person until God enlivened me. I accepted His life and His total forgiveness. I've never looked back. All Sarah could do at that moment was sit in silence before Rhonda. She sat in awe of Rhonda, her best friend, a true believer, reborn as if from the dead. That is what happened to Jasmine? No, it couldn't be. There existed no exact conversion formula. How would she discover her mother's? Or, for that matter, how could she arrive at her own conversion? Did she even want what Rhonda possessed? Sarah didn't believe she was thinking this or even wanting this, and now she felt confused. Did she never really understand her mother's unless she became a Christian? Was this the requirement she must fulfill? As Sarah pondered these thoughts, Rhonda stood up. You know, I can't believe how much time I let slip away. Telling you how I became a saint? She laughed. I know that sounds odd coming from a Roman Catholic, calling myself a saint. He stopped, looking down at the distant reflecting Sarah. Hello, Earth to Sarah. I must get back to work. It's true, I'm a supervisor and don't have a fixed station to be at, but I do have to make some effort to earn my wage today. Sarah nodded absent-mindedly at Rhonda. Rhonda took Sarah's hand, patted it silently, then left the break room.